So it's 5:31 on March, what's today, the 8th?
Correct.
Yeah.
The joint Republican and Democratic caucus meeting. Do the roll call: Fred Westcott, Paul Arena, Brad Lindmark, Jim Webster, Joe Hoffman, Kevin McCarthy, Gene Crosby, Ed Kelly, Aaron Booker, Burt Girl, Angie Gorel, Angela Fellers, Dave Tassoni, Steve Schultz, Jaime Salgado, and Jazz Billich. Did I miss anybody who's present at this time? Okay. This week Fred Westcott has the invocation and pledge.
I have nothing prepared. Can we just, do you have someone else?
No, that's for the county board.
Yeah, for the county board meeting, not for tonight.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No.
That I can do.
Okay. I was just letting you know that
All
you're
right, I appreciate it.
okay. All right, with that, next on the agenda for the meeting is 2 appointments. North Park Public Water District Board, Brent Hruby, and Harlem Roscoe Fire District Board, Al Bach Senior. Does anyone have any comment or on that? Let the record show that John Butita has joined us. Any comments on these 2 appointments?
Mr. Arena, are both of these appointments new appointments, or are they return appointments for someone who's already on the board?
North Park Public Water District is a new appointment, Brent Hruby, and Harlem Roscoe Fire District Board is a reappointment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Mr. Lindmark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The returning appointee for Harlem Roscoe, I've had some dealings with the chief there through our foundation, and he highly recommends him, says he does a great job, works well with him. So I will give him my full support.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, and then these appointments lay over for 30 days. I know that we've done in the last meeting, there was some suspension of the rules. I just think in general, we should try to be consistent. If it's a 30-day layover, unless there's a clear need to appoint them sooner, my preference is that we let them lay over so that at times when we do want to give greater scrutiny to a appointee, we're not acting differently. That was one of the criticisms that we heard last year when there was some delay in the appointment. So that's just my take on it, but I understand different people may have different point of view.
I agree, Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Ms. Fellers.
So do I.
Yeah, I also agree with you, Paul.
Okay, thank you. All right. Then let's move on to standing committee reports. Finance, Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee has 5 items that are going to be talked about on Thursday. The first one is resolution extending the deadline for filing applications for the senior citizens assessment freeze homestead exemption. That was passed in the Finance Committee unanimously with 1 absent. This is just extending from, I believe, June 1st to October 1st for senior citizens to extend the deadline for the assessment freeze. All right. I don't know if anybody has any questions regarding that one. If not, I'll move on to the next one. The next one is a resolution opposing the state reduction to the LGDF revenue. As we all know, we kind of talked a little bit about it, I believe, last time, and it went through the Finance Committee and it passed unanimously. The reduction, it's a 10% that the governor's trying to propose. Good kudos that the Senate for the federal government passed the $1.9 trillion. So some of that might funnel down through the states. So that's good news for us in case maybe this will not affect us significantly here, but they're proposing it's a little bit over, I want to say $589,000 that would be an impact to our budget. So we're sending this resolution opposing this reduction unanimously through the county board. All right. Our next item is an ordinance for approval of the budget amendment for emergency rental assistant program to be laid over. We talked a little bit about it in the past. I think everybody has seen the email that we've gotten from Mr. Shirelli in the city of Rockford, kind of that we got emergency rental assistance for that. So we can secure some of that through Mr. Arena has been pushing a little bit with that. So, it got passed. So that's just the budget amendment since it was not part of the budget. So therefore now we're getting those grants for that money for the rental assistance. So it's a budget amendment that's going to come through and it's going to be laid over. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Mr. Arena, to that.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Salgado. So we have done a lot of work on this. There's work still in progress. Alan Zeiss is putting together the policies and procedures that's going to control operations. But in this ordinance, you can see at the end of it, there's an exhibit that lays out the qualifications for people to receive funding. Those are based on the Treasury guidance. This is time sensitive. The advice of the state's attorney's office was not to make any of the purchases of the equipment that we need before this budget was approved. There was a concern that there's a lot of oversight by the Treasury Department and a lot of reporting that we'll have to do after the fact. And they were concerned that that could be a red flag if we started making purchases before the approval. So because I'm in the business of as a housing provider, may have tenants that apply for this. So I'll be abstaining from the vote. So I would ask that someone make a motion to suspend the rules on this and get it passed so that we can get the computer equipment and software ordered.
Yes, and that's a good point, Mr. Arena. As considering that we have an ordinance, I would assume, that we would suspend the rules and pass both. Obviously, the ordinance goes through without having to lay it over or anything like that. So I'm assuming this budget, amendment would suspend the rules and vote on it at the same time, essentially as the ordinance. So
I have a couple of questions about it, if that's okay.
go ahead.
You said that the rules as far as the distribution of the funds are according to some of the guidelines. Is it possible for us to modify those? And are the rules based on income or amount owed? How does the program work?
There's some discretion on what we can do in terms of the policies and procedures, what Mr. Zeiss is working on now. In terms of qualifications, the Treasury Department has some firm guidance. And again, if you look at that last page of the ordinance where it says Exhibit A, that's based on what's been dictated by the Treasury. So that's about our discretion. What was the second part of your question?
I was asking how it's distributed. My concern is that there are a lot of programs that we fund that help low-income individuals, as we should, but the majority of people that I'm hearing from in the constituency that are having difficulty right now are people who are working class and working poor, people who don't necessarily qualify for standard income guidelines. And as many people know, we're going to need to help people with mortgages and back taxes as well. Anyone who had a forbearance agreement with their bank that started at the beginning of COVID, those expired on March 1st. And so we have a tsunami of people who are a year behind on their property taxes and their mortgages. And I know that this is rental assistance, but what are we going to do for people who own their homes so that we don't have a tsunami of foreclosures? I think we need to have that in thought as well.
Okay, so to answer your question about who qualifies, you have to be at 80% of the area median income to qualify, and those income guidelines are also in the packet, so you'll see them there. Priority is given to people who are at 50% of the area median income and people who have been out of work for 90 days. So those are strict in terms of income. And as far as helping other people, the bill that's being worked on right now in Congress for the $1.9 trillion, their money's going to be coming, assuming it passes, money's going to be coming to the county through that one too. And again, it's going to come with guidance from Treasury, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to open up for assistance for those other affected groups that you mentioned, Ms. Fowlers.
I believe that we should be prepared to expand that program in Winnebago County, given that our median income level is so low here. If we're looking at 50% of the median level, we're looking at around minimum wage, and I think that we need to, as a group, pull together and decide how we're going to get property taxes taken care of and mortgages brought up to date. So it's a tangent, but I just wanted that to be said.
I agree. I mean, it just comes down to what the federal government permits us to do with the money. Mr. Zeiss has been very strong in stressing that you have to follow the guidance and they will audit us. And we don't want to get caught up where we're being asked to repay money that we spent without following the rules. So, so where we're able, we're adapting it to fit our circumstances here.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Salgado. I'm sorry, Mr. McCarthy. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, just popping in here at the last minute on this, Mr. Chairman. When would somebody be able to apply for this program?
We're hoping to get it all up and going by April 1st or soon. So everything is ready to make the purchases. As soon as this is approved, Mr. Thompson's going to pull the trigger, get the equipment in here. They set up space on the third floor where Winges used to be. And it's just a matter of getting the software in there. The city of Rockford's Human Service Department is the community action agency for all of Winnebago and Boone County. So they do grant administration now and rental assistance now. So we're relying on their expertise, the software that they're already familiar with, and they're going to hire the personnel who will be, located in our building to go through all the applications.
Very thorough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
A lot of people, I can tell you, a lot of people have spent a great deal of time on this. So the credit has to be given to everyone. Ms. Vaughn from the State's Attorney's Office, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Rickert, Mr. Zeiss, everyone. It turned out to be a lot more complicated than I expected. And also let the record show that Mr. Neighbors has joined us. Okay, are there any other questions for me on the rental assistance program? Okay, Mr. Salgado, please continue.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully too, with those funds coming down from the federal government for the state and counties, hopefully some of that money can be used for, as Mrs. Fowlers was kind of addressing, some of the, taxes and hopefully mortgages, stuff like that. So we'll stay tuned. Hopefully we'll get more information on that. The next item is a budget and ordinance to fund Winnebago County CJCC program. That's to be laid over. This is one of the items that is going to be tomorrow. We have a special finance committee meeting for that. In regards to that, there were some questions on on the actual budget amendment that was proposed for that position. So we'll talk about that more tomorrow, but it's a $64,000. Essentially what happened is it was going through regional plan. We were giving them $20,000 to administer, to work with, with anything justice reform, with courts, with the, states, the sheriff's office, stuff like that, that has to do with, justice reform or anything of that nature. So we were giving them $20,000 essentially. We are creating a position within the administration office to provide that service, to administer, and it's about $64,000, I believe, and change. So some of that offset's going to be from the city of Rockford. They're going to give us $10,000 plus the $20,000 that was going to the regional plan. Now it's coming back. It's going to be kept in here with the county. So that's a 30. There's an additional $30,000 that revenue that's out there for program management, which we have questions on, just making sure where that money's coming from. It's not being used from some other budget. So that's a question that still needs to be posed. In the end, it's about $4,000 that we will have to cover from our fund reserves. That's how that budget amendment will come through, but it's something that we'll discuss tomorrow and ask that questions on that $30,000. But essentially, it's a position that regional plan one was conducting. Now it's coming in-house through the administration office on that. And that will be laid over. But tomorrow, like I said, we have a special meeting to kind of walk through that budget amendment. Mr. Schultz had a couple questions on that. So that's why it's coming back again tomorrow. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Instead of being a $4,000 subsidy, my understanding of the revised budget amendment is that it'll be a $4,000 addition to the fund balance. It was a net positive. And the revenue that this position has been obtaining for the administrative fee on the grant writing that they're doing. So when they write for a grant, they get an award. A certain percentage of that award can be rebated back. In this case, it's going to R1. When we hire this person, it will go to the county. And those fees for grants that we obtain for other entities are going to be part of what funds this new position in the county administration.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Just curious, just a couple, if it comes up tomorrow or before board or whatever, I'm just curious, is this a full-time position? And this 64K number, is that a complete benefit package, or is that just salaries, wages, or what? Just a couple thoughts I had.
Yeah, so it includes benefits and everything. I don't know if it's gonna be completely, I'm assuming it's full-time on this perspective, but it does include benefits, IMRF, life insurance, health insurance. It also includes some of the equipment and stuff like that, some training that's in there. It's part of the budget amendment. So yes, Mr. Tassoni, to answer your question.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll move on to our next item, which is a budget ordinance of vehicle replacement. This is to be laid over. This is in regards to the animal services, getting new vehicle replacements for their current fleet that they have out there. I don't know if you guys recall the dollar amount. I don't have it off the top of my head. I want to say it's a little bit over 500,000, if I'm not mistaken. It was, a portion was budgeted in their budget, and then the remaining cost is going to come from their reserves that they have. So it's going to be covered from their budget, from the animal services. So I don't know the complete dollar amount. So if anybody has it, that was part of the finance, if they have that number, if they want to share that number.
I don't recall what it was off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was like 500. I want to say 500 and something. All right. The next item is item 7, which is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the County of Winnebago and the City of Rockford for the U.S. Department of Treasury Emergency Rental Assistance. As Mr. Arena kind of alluded to, this is an agreement with the City of Rockford. They're going to be doing, obviously hiring their staff to administer this program within our, county, and make that determination on the eligibility and their processing to get that going. Mr. Arena, is there anything else you want to add to this intergovernmental agreement?
Just so that everyone is aware that this, all the responsibility with this remains with the county for all the reporting, for compliance, and for the operation. So we retain control over what happens in Rockford's operating under the policies and procedures that Mr. Zeiss is putting together. There was an option of hiring a third party to administer it, but I think everyone agrees that working with local people, the best approach will have a greater control over costs. All of the expenditures in administering the program will be approved by Mr. Rickard as we go along. So if we had hired a third-party company, they were just going to take a flat percentage fee of the total grant. The Treasury allows 10% of the grant to be used for administrative costs or supportive services for the tenants, like housing, counseling, or legal services. So we have that 10% to work with in funding all of this. So that's the highlights that I can.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Go ahead, Angie.
What I would like to know is, does this cover all of Winnebago County, or is it just Rockford? It's all of Winnebago County.
Right. It's all of Winnebago County. And that was one of my concerns, that people from outside of Winnebago County would become confused if they appeared that they were applying to Rockford for assistance for their property in McChesney Park. So all of the messaging and promotion is our responsibility to create. And we agreed with Rockford that the Rockford would be identified as the community action agency of Winnebago County in that promotion stuff. So people aren't, put off or confused by what's going on. And in the software, the landing page, when people arrive to it, should identify it as a county program. So we don't want anyone to not apply because they think that it's a Rockford only program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Butita.
Thank you. Paul, so we talked about this. So when residents apply for this, they're City of Rockford is actually going to do the processing of it, but are they going to go to the Winnebago County website and find the information to steer them there? Is that what we're saying?
That's right. So it'll be
Okay.
located on our website. Where the software that Rockford uses for their grant administration is called Neighborly. It's like tailored for this purpose. We're purchasing our own license to it, so it'll be branded Winnebago County. The phones will be with Winnebago County phone numbers. So Rockford's going to do the work of working with the public evaluating the applications, but then the checks are going to be produced by Winnebago County and sent to it can go to landlords, and they can also, tenants can get paid their utilities, and possibly internet service was added too. So that money, for the most part, is going to be distributed by the county to the landlord or the utility company.
All right, Mr. Arena, that concludes the finance report for this Thursday coming up.
Thank you, Mr. Delgado. Zoning, Mr. Webster is having a computer issue, and he
Yes.
asked Mr. Schultz if he would go through the agenda for us.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. These two items that are coming forward are both special uses that were laid over on the previous agenda, and they both relate to a winery that is in South Beloit on State Line Road. And so because, again, they've been laid over, they were passed unanimously with conditions, with staff conditions that took into account concerns of the neighbors, as well as just the operating history of this particular winery. So that's what's on the agenda.
Are there any questions for Mr. Schultz on these items?
I can't see anything.
Oh, I hear you, Jim.
Okay. I
There you
can
are.
hear you now. I'm having a problem here now. I can't see anyone, but I can hear you. I had visual, but not audio. Now I got audio, but not visual. So
We can see you and hear you.
I heard what Steve said, so thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Next is economic development. Mr. Billich, do you have anything that you'd like to share with the board? Okay.
Mr. Arena,
Yes.
Mr. Salgado.
Go ahead. Mr.
I don't know if Mr. Billich has a report, but one of the things that I've been talking a little bit to Dave Richter regarding the host fee funds is allocating an annual budget to see how much money we have out there to provide businesses the opportunity, and same with community, based on our policy that we currently have or we've had in the past regarding infrastructure and different economic development for host fee funds. So I've been talking to Mr. Richter a little bit. I think it would be a good idea to kind of look at our policy that we currently have for the host fee funds. The reason being is I've been getting a couple businesses reaching out and trying to say, hey, I would like to apply for grants for the host fee funds. And, you know, in the amounts of $100,000, $200,000. So if there's a way that we can look at our current policy, and this is geared more towards J.S. Billick's committee, to kind of look at what our policy is and see if we have some sort of annual budget within host fee funds for the year that we can allocate some funds for that. So we kind of have some direction on how much we can provide funding, whether it's from a business economic development standpoint or from a community-based organization, non-for-profit that's requesting funding. I think that would be great. I know that I just got a request from Midtown District. They're looking to, apply for some grants. I think they have like a $15 million project. They're gonna come forward and ask for additional funding to see if we could support, that Winnebago County could support them. They've gotten some credits and stuff like that, but it would be nice if we could look at our policy. This is just a recommendation to see what's out there and, kind of set an annual budget for the host fee funds. So at least we can give direction to businesses saying, yes, we do have funding that you guys can apply, or no, whatever the case may be at that time. So just requesting if Mr. Bilich, Economic Development could look at the host fee funds policy and try to set a budget, annual budget, for those host fee funds.
So, Mr. Salgado, will you be making that request during new business then at this board meeting?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, I think that's a good idea. Mr. Village just popped on. I don't know if he.
Sorry about that.
Did you have anything to add, Mr. Village?
I caught most of that, and yeah, absolutely. We can definitely look at it. One thing that have been looking at is figuring out ways to obviously help out the businesses. I've been running into some hiccups because creating a different program where we would be able to be in control of distributing those funds instead of having to go through other organizations like RLDC or something else like that, where there's going to be a 10% surcharge of whatever we do. So one of the things that I'm trying to avoid is having that tacked on. One of the things that I'm trying to focus on is making sure that the community that needs it does get it.
Well, hopefully with this new money coming from the federal government, we'll be able to do that, maybe expand what we're doing now with the rental assistance program in the same way. I wouldn't be surprised if the software that we're buying will accommodate that, but for different purposes, like businesses and, as Ms. Feller said, mortgages and whatnot. So we should know soon what that's going to entail once the Congress passes it. Okay. Anything else for economic development? All right.
No, I'm sorry. I apologize. I have no report. My phone was down for a minute there. I apologize.
No, you're good. Thank you. Operations and Administration Committee, Mr. McDonald's not with us. So, John, can you?
Yeah, I can take care of that. So there's two resolutions this week. The first one is a resolution to change the hours of the county clerk's office on election day. Pretty much a housekeeping resolution where we close the office for all activity other than election activities. The second resolution is awarding bids for uniform rental services. And Mr. Thompson explained in committee that this was a 5-year bid for multiple departments within the county that, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was for less than the previous cost of that, of those services. And both of those will be before us Thursday then.
Thank you, Mr. Vitita. Are there questions on either of those items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Public Works. Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one resolution. It's a resolution authorizing the execution of local public agency agreement for federal participation for rehabilitation of Alpine Road Bridge over Forest Hills Road. It's 80-20 matching federal monies versus county funds. It's yet to be determined whether this item will be laid over or tabled. The bid opening came in at roughly 18% over our projections, which relates to approximately $1 million over what we anticipated. So our engineer at the highway department there is looking into possible underfunding sources and talking with the state as far as what some of our options might be. And so yet to be determined whether we're going to move forward with this, lay it over, table it, or look for other options.
Okay,
That's all I have.
thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Tassoni? Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Tassoni, that intersection of Forest Hills, Riverside, Riverside, and the Alpine Bridge, is there an end date, or is the county going to have all that forever? I mean, that's been a real thorn, under constant repair and construction for, geez, as long as I can remember, 30 some years. And I know the city of Loves Park and the city of Rockford border every one of those intersections. So that'll be county forever then, I take it.
Yeah, that, and like I say, unrelated to this bridge project, but yes, that has been a hot topic of the county. I believe it's on our 5-year cap or the way they align the road projects. It's our number one, probably our number one thing we're looking at. I think it was last board meeting, we did approve some funds for the preliminary engineering. So it's upwards to reconstruct all of that with all the up-to-date features, turn lane signals, reconstruct and everything. It's a $20 to $30 million project. And just the engineering costs is multiple millions, but it is priority one for the county. And you know, I know there's some talks that a capital improvement plan is in the process of being drafted up, and see, that's probably one of the items that's in there on how to fund that, whether it's a bonding, when you're looking at a $30 million project at a 80-20 matching, you know, you're looking at $6-8 million of county share to get going on that. Plus, it's a 3 to 5 year project. If you're starting today, it's 3 to 5 years before completion. That's if you had the money.
Right, and Rockford and Loves Park, they have no obligation or even consideration to chip in on it. Is that the 80-20 part?
No, the 80-20 would be federal match, 80-20 with the county. You know, there's some things depending on how far the right of way goes in either direction on those roadways. Some of the other municipalities kick in for portions that extend into their right of ways. I'm not sure what they are and if they pertain to that area, but that's something else we can look at, you know, for some help in gaining funds.
Right, good. All right. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further for Public Works? No, then Public Safety and Judiciary, Mr. Girl.
Thanks, Chairman. We have one item that laid over from last week, and that is amending the ordinance for the fee schedule for animal services, raising fees from 110 to 150. So that'll be in front of us. And also, we do have a presentation from Brett Frazier from Animal Services. He's going to go over his 2020 annual report, and that's going to be the presentation in the beginning. So any questions for Mr. Frazier, what's going on out of Animal Services, that would be the time. And that is all we have for now. Definitely working on trying to get a committee report, or I'm sorry, a committee scheduled to go over the criminal justice reform bill that was recently passed. So county board members, the committee can ask questions. Hopefully we can have someone from Mr. West's office there to answer those questions. And then hopefully we'll be working with administration, the county board, to come up with ideas for amendments to this criminal justice reform bill. Submit that to our legislators for hopefully consideration. And that way we can get everyone on board with this. Criminal justice reform is the utmost important, but we need to make sure that our officers are covered and we are covered also. So that's what's going on in criminal or public safety.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Girl. Is there questions? Yep. Okay. Seeing none, then I don't think there's any unfinished business. New business, Mr. Salgado mentioned his. Does anyone else have any new business?
Just as a follow-up item for a number of things that we did related to River Bluff, where we increased the CNA rate, worked with the union to get that done. We're dealing with some pretty severe negative numbers as far as what was happening with the finances. I know that Mr. Thompson has been at work on this. There's been a few months that have passed, I think, to the appropriate committee sometime soon. I'm not pushing for something at the next meeting, but just sometime soon, it would be good to even just have a brief update on whether the CNA increase in wages helped us. Were we able to retain staff? Were we able to get new staff? And just kind of an update on what's happening there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. So you'll be mentioning that during new business at the meeting?
Or yes, or just bringing it up at the Finance Committee. I'm putting it out in front of the whole caucus in case another committee had an interest in having a conversation. You know, I don't care what committee it comes to. I just think we need to get an update.
I agree. Yeah, I would put it on the record during new business to ask that it move forward. In
I'd be
whatever.
happy to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I have two items that on new business that I'd like to have addressed. There was two pieces of legislation that affects the county, filed by Senator Stottlemyre. The first is Senate Bill 2278. This is an initiative of the mental health community to make it, and I talked to Senator Stottlemyre today, so I'm not completely clear exactly how this will work, but it appears that it would take the discretion on spending the mental health sales tax strictly to the mental health board. And it appeared to me that it would take us out of that process and remove it from our budgeting process. But Senator Stottlemyre thought that we still might be involved. So on these two, there's two bills here. What I'd like to do is I'm going to ask that we get a resolution drafted for us to take a position on them. And then it'll go to committee and we can discuss it to make sure we fully understand if these bills become law, what it would be the effect on us. So the first is the mental health tax. Basically what it says is if a board is formed for one of those specific taxes that are defined where we were authorized to create the mental health tax, that if a board exists, that board decides how the tax is spent. And I don't know if, when the tax was sold to us to put it on the ballot, we were told that the board would have ultimate authority on the spent, what's spent, and that the health department was going to be the fiscal agent. I don't even know right now if the health department is still the fiscal agent for that tax. So these are all questions that I think we need to get our head around. The second one is Senate Bill 1721. This is a initiative of the land bank, but it changes the trustee program. So my first question here is why the land bank is changing the trustee program, because there's two separate things. What it does is it makes it specific that we can do maintenance on the property to the extent that we're doing it now. The way the law is written currently, it's a more general statement about maintenance. And it also changes, the law currently says that the county makes every effort to acquire all properties that are tax delinquent. And this makes it permissive instead, which is how our IGA is written, I believe, with Region 1, that we may not take ownership of all properties. And I guess from a financial standpoint, that's to the county's advantage, because if we're not taking the worst of properties, then we're not exposed to the liability of having to manage them. But the other question is, if this program is the last resort, what happens to those properties that are just orphaned and, we don't take them up? What would happen to them then? It also has language in there allowing the land bank to get a judicial deed, or it doesn't say land bank, it just says another governmental entity to get a judicial deed to properties that are in the program, which I can understand that's, an advantage to the land bank to get inventory of properties to develop and sell. And then the one part of it that's curious to me is it reduces the interest that the county would earn, the penalty interest for redemptions on delinquent taxes. And I asked Senator Stottlemyre why that was in there, and he couldn't answer that question. But currently, the way that tax sales work is people who are delinquent pay a fixed interest rate on their outstanding balance every 6 months. And this would change it to every year, so it would lengthen that period of time. And it appears to me that that would reduce our potential revenue. I had talked to Chairman Shirelli about these. He was unfamiliar with them. He took both of these and sent them to the state's attorney's office for their review. So, based on the timeline of the General Assembly, I think, if we get it into committee next week with some explanation from the state's attorney's office on what this all means, we can debate it, take a position on them, either for or against, and then Chairman Shirelli can file our position when the bills come up in committee. And Senator Stottleman was completely open to working with us on it. And, he just said they're just initial filings. So I'll be making a request for those two resolutions. Are there any questions on these items?
No, Mr. Arena, if I may, I think it's good that you kind of brought this to us. Do you know if these two, especially the mental health one, was that part of because we imposed this tax? Obviously, the increase to collect that tax as a tax levy piece, was that part of how that bill was kind of presented, and that's why it came into play? Do you know what was the intent here? Was it because that we did that, essentially give more control to the mental health board, to have that luxury to take those tax dollars and apply them the way they want to?
It wasn't completely clear to me. So Senator Stottleman mentioned there's another taxing mechanism called the 708 board, which serves the same purpose, but instead of a sales tax, it's a property tax. And Senator Stottleman said that this language mirrors the language of that board, which I haven't had a chance to see. And I asked him why they'd be making a change so early in the process that we haven't even gone through a tax cycle where we're administering any of these monies yet. So, why is there a need to fix it at this point in time? And he really couldn't answer it. So
Yeah,
that's why I think we need to have this in committee to really debate it, because
and I would actually offer a proposal that Mr. Stottleman or whoever, if they could come in and kind of have a discussion with us and kind of hear, once we have an understanding of what's going on through the state's attorneys, their interpretation of what that bill and the impact, and maybe we can have a formal discussion with Mr. Stottleman, his staff, or whoever, and kind of bring to light, our issues or what that impact would be to the county, and the structure aspect of it. And have a dialogue potentially, and maybe maybe the bill is not warranted at this point in time, maybe further down the road when we have historical data or benchmarks set by the mental health board, essentially, then once they're up and running and on the road, down the road. So I hope that comes through, and thank you for bringing that information, especially as well with the land bank.
Right. As a matter of fact, these probably maybe might be best addressed in finance once we get the resolution, because the mental health tax was approved in finance, and the trustee program, I think that went through operations, but this is more of the effective financial aspects of it, I think. So I don't know. We'll have to make that decision on which committees to run them through.
Mr. Arena,
Yes.
Angie Gorel. One of the things that we worked on trying to find the financing for mental health, we really investigated the 708 board. Had we put that on a ballot, because the public would have had to have voted for it, and once they found out it was against their properties, that thing never would have gone through. Also remember, this 1% tax, this tax that went through, the sales tax that went through for mental health, we are the first county, I believe, you can check it on me, but I believe we're the first county who has taken advantage of it. That's brand new. So I can see why all of a sudden they want to start making some amendments to it. But that is that has to be for mental health, period. It should not be commingled with any other funds or be used for if we run short of money in our budget, that we go into their mental health. No, it can't be that way. And so, yes, when you start going, Steve Stadelman and others, because Dr. Martell and I went before them when we were fighting to find out what kind of financing we could do for mental health that didn't involve property taxes. And this is the only thing we came up with. And actually, this isn't new. We've been working on it for over 10 years of how to do it where everyone's involved with the 1%, but only property taxes would be involved. There's a 708, there's another one too, but anything else would have been property taxes. Also remember, the way we started here in Winnebago County was because the governor at that time issued to our chairman the fact that we had no mental health in Winnebago County for funding. And that's why we had to start a committee for that through the health department to get that going so that we could come up with some type of monies and start some type of a mental health board like we did. And so you have to go back. I know people don't like to go back and listen to how, come, and why, and what for. But this is what happened. It's been over 10 years we've been working on this. So any of you on this board, would you rather us do it 708 and get your property taxed and all your constituents hollering at you? And that's why we need to straighten this up with Senator Stadelman. So when you get to that part, we not only need to have our attorneys look at it, I'd like to sit on that. You should also have the president of the mental health board sit on that too, because those misunderstandings need to get straightened out. Thank you, Paul.
Right, and I agree with you.
Paul, this is Angela Fellows.
Go ahead.
It's my understanding that the move to administer the mental health sales tax in the same way that a 708 is administered is a simple housekeeping procedure. It's to streamline the way that funds are distributed back to counties once they've been collected. The board itself, the mental health board, would still have the same autonomy that they have now. It would just be, I guess, extra codified, the same way that any other department does. So there's a budget based on revenue and allocations that goes into the animal services, for example, and then they decide amongst themselves how they're going to spend the money. It comes to the board and the board says yay or nay. It's the same kind of thing. It's meant to protect those funds from being rated for other departments or things that are not related to mental health. And I know that Senator Stadelman can speak to that with more clarity, but it is my understanding that this is simple housekeeping and to provide clarity. It's not a big overwhelming change. It's actually taking away ambiguity rather than creating additional.
Okay, well, that's why we'll have the attorneys look at it, because when I read it, it appears that the ultimate authority on spending the money would be with the mental health board. And what we were told in the finance committee meeting when we put the mental health tax on the ballot is that the county board would have ultimate authority over spending it. Not to say that we would spend it on something other than mental health, but I think we have the say so on, what organization gets it, or, like I said, we haven't even done it yet, so it's hard to even know what's going to happen in the process. But
that's exactly right.
Okay, hang on.
It's Angie Goro. First of all, it's just like you say, it's just like anything else in the county. If you're getting state funds, it has to go through our treasurer's office. Actually, it goes through our auditor's office, because then that fund coming into our county is given a number. And so anytime money is drawn, because it's a state tax, that's how it has to go, through our county. And what we do is, like when they're saying, I have, just like tonight, allocations for monies. That's the same thing. We say yes or we say no. We can't tell them what to do with it, but we can say, yeah, this is good, this is bad. You know, show us the proof that this is a good organization to invest in, or it's not. It's no different than any other grant that's written through the government. There
Okay.
has to it has to be controlled
Right.
and just given away.
Okay, so I agree, and you know, that's why I think we'll have it in committee, have the experts in, and we'll all learn about it, and then we can, as a board, take a position, we like it or we don't. So, any other comments or questions on this issue?
No.
Anybody have any other?
One more thing, if I may, Paul.
Go ahead, Mr. Webster.
I'll try not to take too much time. Excuse me. This is my rant again about felons with a gun issue. Dave, Mr. Tassoni, you sent me a text message today, and I didn't realize this, but March 3rd, Wednesday, 3 bad guys got busted together on a variety of charges there. Domestic battery among them, obstructing, failure to appear warrants. And then 2 out of the 3 were charged with felon with a gun, felon in possession again. So I guess I'm going to ask Bert, perhaps, maybe at Public Safety Committee, before it goes to committee, perhaps I think he may be closest to the state attorneys. Get an answer on this. Are they going to force the feds to do their job and take over the prosecution of at least 2 out of 3 of the guys because they're felon in possession of a gun, which is a mandatory minimum charge. It's a federal law that they broke. Just like if they robbed a bank or were guilty of tax evasion. Those are federal laws. Now, we don't prosecute people locally here for bank robbery. We don't prosecute people locally here for tax evasion. Why? Because the federal government made these laws. Now, it's up to them to follow through and do the prosecution on this. Half this meeting tonight was involved about conversation involved about money. And I've said this many times. Everything we do revolves around the dollar, practically everything. And now we know we're in dire straits as far as funding things that we already have in place. And so if this is on the backs of our local state attorneys and our local jail capacities and all the stuff like this, everything involved there, that's just more money coming out of our pool, so to speak, of money that we have to work with. Now, once again, I'm a staunch of legal gun ownership. But the bad guy with the gun, he's got to go. And it's up to the feds to get off their rear ends and do the job. So that's my rant again. And I'm going to keep on ranting till I get some answers to these questions. Thank you.
Jim, I hope you do keep ranting on this because of the fact we have more illegal guns in this area. It's horrible the way it's just saturated with illegal guns. Where do those illegal guns come from? Why are they not trying to stop those illegal guns coming into our area? Sometimes they might want to go out to some of our big mall parking lots and see the transactions that go on because it's right off of I-90 and find out how many illegal drugs and how many illegal guns are coming into Winnebago County. And Aaron, can you say yes to that or not?
Yeah, they really do come from Chicago. A lot of the drug running comes up from the south, on I-39, and the I-90 interchange is all right there at Cherry Valley. You're right. But a lot of our guns, it seems like we take so many guns off the streets here in Rockford, and you keep wondering where are we going to get ahead of the game here? Well, the guns keep coming from Chicago. A lot of the gangs have strong connections with the Chicago gangs, so a lot of the guns come from Chicago. So we got to step up enforcement with the state police. Have like a metro unit, again, a tactical unit, which I think they do. And again, what's going on in Cherryvale is a disgrace. But yeah, a lot of the guns come from Chicago, actually.
Any of the hotels that are along our I-90 corridor, they really need to start looking at them, of the transactions that go in and out of those parking lots. And if you think I'm just a woman talking off the top of my head, sorry about that. I've been with this stuff since the early 90s, and all it has done is progress. And you're absolutely right, Jim. It's feds, it's the state, it's the local who needs to get together and work on that and stop all that traffic coming into our area. Thank you.
So, it sounds to me like, Mr. Webster, you're preaching to the choir here. Everyone agrees with you. So I think what we need to determine is what's a next step to advance, this issue beyond this board. Have we passed a resolution in the past, asking for action from others on this issue? Or maybe that's the next thing we could do. Maybe we need to have a sit down with the state's attorney and some of the other people in law enforcement, and maybe this would be something for the Public Safety and Judiciary Committee to address.
Mr. Chairman, Bert Garrell here. Sorry, I'm having problems with my video, but yeah, I think it's definitely would behoove us just to bring in the state's attorney and the chief judge to educate us on just the actual state law versus federal law when it comes to gun crimes, because there are differences, especially when federal gun crimes are committed, such as bringing a gun across borders, whatever it may be. But I think it would be helpful if we had the chief judge and the state's attorney come in and kind of double team this and answer questions.
Okay. Well,
so I will work on that.
Yeah, I would say Mr. Webster, connect with Mr. Girl and make sure that, it's moved forward in the way that satisfies your concerns.
Perfect.
I'd like to bring a resolution forward to protect lawful gun ownership.
By all means, I mean, I would suggest bring it up in new business and ask the state's attorney to draft it.
And that would be great. And all I've been asking for years is for a state's attorney to sit down and tell us why these felon with a gun, the federal laws specifically speaking of, is a mandatory minimum 5 years in federal prison, and why they are not pressing the feds to prosecute.
Well,
So many times, the aggravating part is, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but they've got a catch and release program, it seems like. And so guy gets busted, he's a felon with a gun, but then they get a little bit of dope with whether it's heroin or whatever. They wind up prosecuting the guy for the drug charge because it's easy to do, and he slips through the cracks on the federal charge. That's the issue.
Well, I'm sure State's Attorney Hanley would sit down with us. He seems to be very accessible. Mr.
Okay,
Testoni, I'm sorry, Mr. Webster, did you have more?
No, that ends my rant for this evening.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tassoni, you had something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say I echo Mr. Webster's and Mr. Girl's thoughts and sentiment on this item too. And I very much would, I know I've heard it bits and pieces over the years about why and why not federal crimes, gun crimes, local, state, whatever. But I would really appreciate some kind of, a little presentation from our state's attorney and maybe the chief judge. And I don't know if the sheriff needs to be involved as well, but just for an update on how this happens, why not, what can we do, what can't we do? And like I say, a little update as far as these federal crimes and all these guns and what's really going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. So I think you got everyone report on moving something forward here. Ms. Squirrel?
I want to add to David. David, it should also be the sheriff and the police chiefs of Winnebago County, all of them, and find out what's going on with this. Just don't lay it on the state's attorney and the chief judge. Lay it on all of the chiefs of police and the sheriff in Winnebago County, and see what they're doing to help to prevent this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gurl. So I think we'll let Mr. Gurl and Mr. Webster coordinate, and they could discuss it. And, any other board member who's interested in it should probably touch base with one of them and let them put together something for all of us. Okay. Is there anything else to bring before the caucus? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Hoffman, second by Mr. Gurl. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
See you soon.